Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on this cold night. I think you're in for a treat, though, so this will be a very interactive talk, I think, and very informative for you. So thank you for coming. So I'm going to read Dr. Alamar's biography, which is very impressive, but I just first wanted to mention that everyone should have gotten an evaluation form on your way in. If you didn't, there are some more on your way out. So please, this really helps us figure out what kind of programming people want and like. So if you could take a few minutes at the end. Thank you. Okay. So Dr. Amy Alamar has worked in the field of education as a teacher educator, researcher, parent educator, and education reformer for over 15 years. In late 2014, Dr. Alamar's first book was published, Parenting for the Genius, Developing Confidence in Your Parenting Through Reflective Practice. This book is a comprehensive guide in becoming the most thoughtful and confident parent possible, with anecdotes and details related to the guidance and support of children throughout their formative year. Her second book, The Parenting Project, Build Extraordinary Relationships with Your Kids Through Daily Conversation, focuses on communication strategies to maintain influence with your kids. And that's the subject of this talk tonight. And we actually will be raffling off 3 books tonight. So after the talk, if you've entered the raffle, and that's at the table when you first walk in, we'll pick 3 names and 3 lucky people will get a book, and Dr. Alamar will personalize those as well. So, and then we'll also have 2 copies of her book in our library at the New Canaan Cares office. Dr. Alamar hosted the Parenting from the Trenches on yellowbrick.me and is a contributing author to the Disney parenting website Babel and the psychology blog Hey Sigmund. Dr. Alamar worked as the Director of Learning and Instruction at Guru Designing and implementing digital curriculum for K-12 schools. Previous to that, she served as the school's program director for Challenge Success at Stanford University, where she oversaw programming for member schools and conducted professional development for middle and high school faculty and parent education presentations. As a frequent speaker to parent and faculty groups, Dr. Alamar focuses on a wide range of parenting topics, including student stress and well-being, raising digital natives in the information age, and parenting kids with character. In 2016, Dr. Alamar was an invited guest of Michelle Obama at the White House for a conversation about kids' health. Dr. Alamar is married and the mother of 3 children, whom she learns from and enjoys each and every day. She is a resident of Avon, Connecticut, where she serves on the board of the Watkinson School and the Avon Education Foundation, dedicated to promoting and enhancing excellence in education. So as you can see, we're in good hands, so please join me in welcoming Dr. Alamar.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And, you know, as I was preparing to talk to you guys today, I was thinking about just last week when my daughter came home. It was a Wednesday, and everything seemed to be fairly normal for a Wednesday. And she went off to her dance class, where she's at right now. When she got home, she had access to what I think can be a wonderful tool and a terrible tool called Power School. And she checked and had failed a test and was devastated. And she just like burst into tears and burst into my bedroom. And you know, it's almost bedtime. She's 15 years old. What do you want to do when you see your kid burst into tears? You just want to like burst into tears yourself, hug them, fix it, make it all better. And she just was beside herself. And she felt like she had let me down and she had let herself down. She didn't understand why she failed. And it was like all those emotions that come out at night. And the one thing I had to remember in that moment, and the reason I shared that with you, because we've all been in that moment, right, is I couldn't change it. I couldn't just change her score for her. I, of course, wanted to be like, well, can't you ask if you can do corrections? Or, you know, what did you miss? Can you just do an extra credit assignment? But that wasn't really the point of her tears, and that wasn't really what was going to help her in the long run. And all she really needed me to do was say, wow, that sucks. What can I do to help you? Do you want to talk to your teacher? What's your next step? And kind of walk her through it. And within 15 minutes, she was okay. She wasn't thrilled, but she was okay. We were watching some horrible television show, enjoying it. And, you know, she went off to bed, and the next day she talked with her teacher on her own. And so what I'm reminding us of as I'm thinking about talking with our kids is it's very intuitive to jump in and help them and want to fix everything. And we have to remember that we have to let them hurt a little. We have to let them be a little bit uncomfortable, because if we don't do it now, if we don't create that space for them to pick themselves up, they won't learn how to do it when they're older. So I'm going to start by asking you a question. When you think about your child at 36 years old, just a random age, as an adult, what does happiness look like? And you can scream all the way from the back. What does happiness look like? Independence. What's that? Balance. Purpose. Did you say being the boss of their children? And you get to be grandma and grandpa? Yeah. As I tour schools, the number 1 and 2 answers I hear are just what you guys are saying: independence, or out of the house, and interpersonal skills, or meaningful relationships, finding purpose in what they do and connections with others. So we want to keep those as our lighthouse. We want to make sure that we're always thinking about, what can I do to promote that independence? What can I do to help them seek out those meaningful relationships? And that has to be the purpose of everything we do. So when my daughter came in and she was crying and I really wanted to just fix everything, what could I do to help her be independent? I didn't have to leave her on her own. Oh, you have to fix this yourself. But what could I do to help her figure out how to be independent? So I'm going to share this framework with you. And this is an educational concept that teachers use every day to improve their instruction. It's called reflective practice. And what we do when we think about reflective practice is we think about, what am I doing well that I want to recreate every day? When that lesson goes so smoothly, what do I want to do again and again and again? And when everybody bombs the test or is talking in class, what do I need to fix? So if we're parents and we're thinking about reflective practice, when I picked my kids up at school early and we got home and we all made dinner together and we were laughing at a television show and we were playing board games, what can I recreate to make that magical moment happen again? When we all went to bed happy and loving each other, nobody fought. And then you think about, well, the day that I picked my kids up from school and they were all bickering with me from the moment they got in the car, and I had to turn off the radio and yell at them, and then we ended up having to do fast food for dinner because I was just so fed up. Like, what went wrong that day that I can own and I can tweak? And what can I fix? So it's learning from your mistakes and learning from your success. Sounds really simple, and it is, but it's not easy. We have to, it's called practice for a reason. So we're going to think about, how do we develop character and promote that independence? How do we nurture their well-being while doing this? And how do we foster the community? Because we're not in this alone, right? We are in this with other people. We're in this with teachers. We're in this with administrators. We're in this with New Canaan Cares, right? We have a community around us. So how do we use that community to help us? Who do we lean on? And then when you think about that lighthouse that we talked about, those meaningful relationships, those interpersonal skills we want to teach our kids, how do we teach them to foster their own community? So we're modeling for them. Oh, here's somebody. I can find somebody like that. My mom always had that person come over. Now I can always have that person come over. So we're teaching them those things. So I'm going to share some trends in the research which are going to be a little bit alarming. Some of them may resonate with you. You may say, oh yeah, I see that. Or you may say, no, that's not true in my home. These are averages taken from a survey we did at Stanford with over 10,000 students across the country, public and private schools alike, across SES, social economic status platforms. So, really looking at all of the students around, a good sample of students around the country. And we were seeing a couple of things. We're seeing that this interpersonal skill development is a little bit delayed. Now, some of that, and we'll talk a little bit about technology, some of it's technology because we're here and we're connecting this way, but it's not all technology. It's also being super busy, being super obligated to things, specializing in things at very young ages. So we're just going to think about sort of why we're seeing a delay in some of the interpersonal skills. We're seeing a lack of advocacy. So kids doing school. is what we call it. And there's actually a book that my colleague wrote called Doing School, sort of this robo-student. And I know I need to do this to get this grade, and then I need to get this grade to get into this class, and then I need to take this class to get into this college, and sort of just going through the motions as opposed to really understanding. And when we see this, we see two things happen. We see kids who super excel and end up in things they're not engaged in, and we see kids who just fall back and opt out because they can't keep up. And so why? Why would I do it if I can't keep up? So what we really want to do is we want to promote engagement in learning. And these are just a list of my resources. And I told Ellen I'm happy to share this slideshow with you afterwards too. So this is just so you know where I get my stuff. Okay, so homework. We're seeing on average, and again, this may or may not resonate with you, we're seeing on average kids are doing too much homework. And when we think about homework, don't worry too much about time, worry more about engagement. So you can't really, as a parent, control how much homework your kid has. But what you can do is talk to them about it and understand what it is and communicate with their teacher and or if they're older. And I should say, how many of you have middle school students? Okay, and how many have high school students? And how about younger? And older, like college? Okay, so a pretty good mix. Okay, so when we talk about the homework, you know, if they're middle school, high school, your student can talk to their teacher themselves, but you can coach them at home. You can say, it seems like you're doing a lot of homework. What's the homework about? Is it engaging? Are you enjoying it? Is it too much? Do you want to talk to your teacher about it? Because most teachers are in this for your students. Very few teachers come to school and say, I'm going to get those kids. So they really want your kids to succeed. And so you really want to teach your child to advocate for themselves and say, I can't do this much homework. We know that after 2 hours in high school, there's no significant correlation with academic achievement. And we know in middle school, after 1 hour. So we really don't want to see kids doing too much homework. In the elementary ages, it's really not scientific, but they suggest about 10 minutes per grade level. So fifth graders doing 50 minutes of homework. Extracurriculars. The good news is 85% of kids are participating in extracurricular activities, and we like this. We like kids to explore. We want them to learn how to do new things, try new skills. Now, what we want to remember is our kids don't have to be fluent in Mandarin and chess masters by the age of 6. They can participate in playgroups at the park. They can go to library story times. They can do free things. They can do rec sports. They don't have to be in travel soccer. So we want to make sure that they are exploring and they're finding what they love to do. They don't have to have their developed passion, you know, before high school. They really just don't. Now, if you've got that student that is passionate, that has that drive and has their, you know, soccer cleats on their shoulder and is out the door at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning to go practice, great. You know, totally, I endorse that. But for the most part, on average, our kids are average. So we want them trying new things. We want them going to the park. We want them learning new skills and really in it for the teamwork, for the collaboration, to learn about determination. It may be an instrument that they like to play instead of a sport that they want to do. It could be just free creative art. So we really just want them trying new things. We're seeing that kids aren't getting enough sleep. So the dark bars are the actual sleep, and it starts with high school on the left, middle school in the middle, and elementary on the right. So the light bars are the recommended sleep. So you can see at every age they're getting not enough sleep. Now, again, this may not resonate. If your kids are getting their recommended sleep, that's wonderful. And it's also important to know that each kid is different. I have 2 boys that get 10 hours of sleep every night. It's great. That's what they need. They sleep really well. My daughter doesn't. She's been an insomniac since she was an infant. I cannot get her to get more than 7 hours of sleep. I know she needs more than that. I try my best. So we do our best, right? We teach them that this is important. She's got a bedtime. She's got quiet time. You know, we do everything we can to foster that quiet, meditative time for them so that they get that rest. Their brains are developing. So don't kill yourself if you can't get them to that, you know, APA recommended sleep time, but really carve it out, make sure it's a priority. A beautiful thing for the high schooler who likes to drive, the carrot is the car keys. You cannot drive unless you've had 7 hours of sleep or whatever it is in your home. You may not drive. It's absolutely not okay. Because we know that sleepy driving is as bad as drunk driving. So that's a great carrot if your kid happens to be a driver and you are fortunate enough to give them a car. Okay, academic integrity. This is all self-reported cheating. So we are seeing high incidences of cheating. Now, a lot of this is that robo student, that sort of, I need to do this. I've got to do it because I've got to get to somewhere. And so one really great way that we work with teachers to combat this is allowing for collaboration, allowing for group work, and really teaching kids that it's not always about the grade. And one thing for parents to understand is, and this is very counterintuitive for parents, if the parent is focused on mastery, that means understanding and demonstrating understanding, versus performance, meaning grade or score. If the parent is focused on mastery, the student actually does better academically, performance-wise. So if we can really ask those questions of, what did you learn today, and like really care about the answer, and talking about it, and really modeling learning opportunities at home, as opposed to, how'd the test go? Oh, can you do corrections? You know, we really want to dial it back and not worry so much. Or if they did badly, not going, yikes, right? Like, oh, well, what did you think about that? Was that a surprise to you? You know, really practicing your open-ended questions. Pretend you're a therapist, you know? And really, when you don't have something to say, when you're really not sure, just wait. I'll give you some more tips for talking with your kids, but just wait. Just let it sit in. That's an okay response. Okay, we're seeing an increase in anxiety and depression in our kids these days. And this is something that speaks very dearly to me, because this is something where this is their health, right? This is where it really matters, because we don't want our kids at risk. And they're around the performance and the pressure all the time. And so when we see this increase in anxiety and depression, we really want to address it. And there are doctors out there, and there are medicines people can take, and that is great. But if we can prevent and if we can protect, that is so important. And the research suggests that if a child believes that there is one adult on the campus that cares for them outside of their academic performance, they are less at risk. Okay, so that's all they need, is just one person, but they have to know that that person cares about them outside of their academics. We also know the silver bullet in parenting, the one thing you should take away, if you only take away one thing tonight, is family time. Now, it's often called family dinner, and that's great if you can have family dinners together, but not every family can make it work for dinner. It could be breakfast. It could be a hike. My family does not hike, but it could be a hike. It could be brunch. It can be just board game time after dinner. And even if it means that you go to bed a little bit later, even though I told you sleep was important, squeeze in the family time. 25 minutes a day, 5 days a week. That's your silver bullet. If you're spending time with family, the kids are less at risk for depression, less at risk for anxiety. They're less likely to be exposed to dangerous behaviors, and they are more likely to talk to you when they do make decisions. So this is really important. Definitely want to protect that. Social media. Now, this is, technology is here to stay, and it's only going to get more complicated for us. So we can't say, don't let them be on the screen. But what we do want to say is, how can we engage with them about what they're seeing on the screen? And how do we teach them to limit the screen time? So number one, we model it, right? Number one, we say, it's family dinner time. I'm putting away the phone. I'm here tonight, and I'm engaged with you. My phone is not here. Because research will tell you that if my phone were here and it were even face down, that's signaling to you, so like if you're at the dinner table and you put it face down, that signals to you that you are not as important to me as if that phone is out of sight. So we want to make sure the phone is out of sight when we are truly engaging with our kids. You know when somebody looks at the phone and they see it ringing and they go, oh, I'm not going to get that. that's not actually a compliment to you, okay, because they bothered to look at it. So we just want to be really mindful. I'm not saying you'll never look at your phone in front of your kid. I'm just saying when it's important, when you're having that engagement, you want to be mindful of these things, that you're really putting them first. I put these statistics up here about cyberbullying, but this is like the least of your worries, because true cyberbullying and stalking doesn't happen to most kids. It's an increase because it's new, because it's happening. But what you really need to worry about is the development of the personal skills. So you really want your kids learning how to make eye contact, how to have conversations, and you really want them to not worry about metric phobia. And if you haven't heard that term before, it's sort of that idea of, I put this out there on Instagram, how many people liked it? Oh, nobody liked it. Only 2 people liked it. Oh, I don't have any friends. You know, and sort of going into that silo and worrying. And it's not something you can really stop unless you teach your child to recognize it. And they will say, maybe Facebook's not good for, well, they'll say Facebook's not good for them because it's for old people now, but maybe Instagram's not good for me. Maybe Twitter's not good for me because I'm not feeling good about myself. So that's what you teach them. How does this make you feel? What is your engagement like? Do Snapchat with them when they first put it on their phone. Or if it's too late and it's already on their phone, do it with them now. What is this Snapchat? Let's check out a couple together. Why do you think this is fun and engaging? And if you start to see them a little bit dejected and you notice that their behavior changes when they're on their phone or right after they've checked their phone, then that's a time to check in about it and how it's affecting them. Okay, so before we get into tips on talking specifically and building these conversations, I want to just share this clip with you. I think it will really resonate with anybody who's raising a child in America.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't!
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on? We can work it out. We can work it out.
Thank you. So really thinking about, you know, listening, what is our role in the conversation? How do we help foster their own independence while helping them through a difficult situation? So just quietly think for a moment, what is your communication challenge? I mean, you might have 20, but is there one particular? For example, when we're in the car, my kid is always on their telephone and won't talk to me. Or my tween son doesn't speak anymore. That happens a lot. That's a common one. My tween son has stopped reporting anything. My siblings bicker. Whatever it is, think in your mind, what is that communication challenge? And while you're thinking about it and while I'm talking, just kind of think about, what is it that I own in that challenge? What is it that I can do? Do I need to step back? Do I need to just listen more? Do I need to step up? Do I need to find some deeper help? So just kind of thinking about that as we go through some of these strategies. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit first about sort of common strategies. So really when you're having conversations, one important thing is to note that your nonverbal communication is important too. It's not everything, but it is about 75 to 85% of what you convey. So if I'm really, really angry with you, you're not going to understand, because I'm smiling and I'm open and I'm being really soft-spoken. So really you want to think about, like, how am I conveying this? And if you're the type of person who kind of steps back or starts pointing your finger or jumps to things, think about how that's going to be perceived by your child, okay? So just remembering that your nonverbal communication is super important. Some of it is, what therapists might use are, being open with your body, mimicking, doing a lot of mirroring, kind of keeping an open space, and thinking about sort of, how am I coming across? And would this be intimidating, or would this be too soft-spoken for the conversation? I realize you probably can't, maybe you can read that from the back, I don't know. This is one of my favorite quotes that we put in the book, and really it's about listening is not just waiting your turn to talk. And this is something that I fall victim to a lot. I really have a lot to say, as you can imagine. I'm a researcher, I'm a writer, I want to talk all the time. But when I'm talking to my kids and I'm listening to my kids, it's really not about me and what I have to say. And so listening is about processing what they're saying and carving out a response to that. So there's 3 things you can either control or take note of when you're having these conversations: tone, setting, and timing. So your tone is something where if you're angry or scared, it's very hard to control. So like I said, you can control these things or not, but you can always be aware of them. So if you are flying off the handle, if your kid did something really stupid and you are scared or angry or disappointed or frustrated, it's okay for them to see that, and it's okay for you to have that tone, but make sure that you come back to it and say, I might have been a little bit too angry to convey everything I wanted to in that conversation. So let's step back and think about it. And they'll see you kind of going through your own checklist, okay? So when you're scared, like when your kid was little and you grabbed them because they were about to run into the street, like, yeah, your tone is harsh. You're like, stop, right? But then you stop and you say, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I understand that might have scared you. I was scared. So you sort of explain it. So your tone has to really match the conversation, and if it doesn't, you have to take note of that. That also goes for when your kid is sad or they're disappointed in something. Your tone has to be really inviting of that. So you've had a great day and you're like this, and your kid needs you to be kind of here, then you got to be there, and you got to make sure you understand that. Okay, setting. Now, everybody will tell you the best place to have a conversation is in the car, because you don't have to make eye contact. And that is true. The car is a fantastic place to have lots of awkward conversations, and I encourage it, because when you're in the car, you have a somewhat captive audience. So cars can be great. Be mindful of your setting. Is this a place where I'm distracted? So if I'm cooking dinner, am I too distracted? Do I want to be a little bit distracted? Do I not want to seem too interested in my son's girlfriend, and maybe I look a little busy, but we're just talking casually? Or are we talking about him having sex with his girlfriend and I want to be really, really present and I don't want to be distracted at all? So thinking about the setting. Is it a comfortable place? The bedroom is a great place to have a lot of conversations, because your child often feels most comfortable in their own bedroom. At night, when they're a little bit tired, but maybe they want to stay up. Even the adolescents like to stay up a little late, and that's when they're a little bit more likely to be open with their parents. So, maybe they're kind of in their rested phase, and that's a good time. Mornings are often hard for adolescents because they're busy, they've got to get out the door. They're not really morning people typically. Some are, but not typically. So morning can be hard, breakfast time. And that kind of leads into timing. So are we all tired and grumpy, or are we well rested? Now, you can't wait to have some conversations, right? Like your kid says, I want to go to a party. I don't know if the parents are going to be there. There might be alcohol. Can I go? I mean, you don't really have a lot of time to make that decision if it's, in 5 minutes. So you have to make your decision and have that conversation, but it doesn't mean you can't come back to it. So let's use that example, right? So they went out and you say, I don't really like how we did that conversation. You went to the party, you didn't know if parents were there. I would have preferred to have called ahead. I would have liked you to have gotten me a telephone number. So next time, this is how I would like it to play out. And that's a way you can return to a conversation even though something's already happened. So it's not like, and that's that reflective practice, right? It's not like we make the right decision in every moment. It's not like we're always perfect. It's we're learning from it. So in that conversation, it's like, well, he really wants to go to the party. He's got a safe ride because I'm going to drive him. He's so embarrassed he doesn't want me to go to the door. He's going to text me if a parent's there. You know, you kind of make those decisions, and then you walk it back and you say, next time I'm going to need more time. Or next time we're going to do it this way. And there's lots of ways you can play it out. So don't worry if you made that sort of mistake and you feel like, well, that wasn't great. You're just really aware of the timing of that conversation and how it needs to take place next time. When we think about that, we're going to kind of go into some general strategies, and then I'm going to talk to you about different types of conversations, and I'll give you some more specific examples. So general strategies are, like in the video, reserving judgment and really just allowing them to fix it themselves. I say let them hurt. And I really like that idea because it's really hard to let your kid hurt. And we really need them. We need them to understand what pain is. I'm not saying if they're bleeding, you don't get them a Band-Aid. I'm saying if they're having some emotional trauma, they need to understand what that is, and they need to kind of see it through, and we help them. We help them. We teach them our coping strategies. We don't fix it for them. We ask a lot of open-ended questions, and we let go of expectations. So, oh, you're going to quit ballet? You're such a great dancer. That's not what he or she wants to do. Let go of the expectation. Like, oh, tell me about why you want to quit. What's your thinking? Do you think you'll continue with dance? What are you interested in exploring next, right? It doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything. It means let go of the expectation, see where it takes you. You can have some non-negotiables. A lot of parents are like, piano is a non-negotiable. Religious school is a non-negotiable. That's okay, but let go of the expectations and let them help you define it. As we're raising tweens and teens, they develop these sort of inconvenient things we call personalities, right? And they want to direct some of their life, and that's what we want. Remember that lighthouse we talked about? We want them to be independent. So how do we help them to that? What are we doing to promote that independence today? And it's asking those questions. Focus on the positive. I want to be really clear that I'm not talking about always having a positive attitude and tone and like we're always smiling, because that's not what I'm talking about. Mr. Brady lied when he said we always have to go to bed happy. And in fact, the night that you go to bed very frustrated, you might have done a very good job as a parent. But what I mean by focus on the positive is this. In the example with my daughter, my positive to her was, and I kid you not, I'm so glad you care about your grade. Here's a girl who I didn't know if she cared about her grade. She's kind of like one of those kids that's like, make it interesting and I'll show up. So I was like, wow, you really care about your grade. I'm excited about that. That's the positive there. That was the best I could find in that situation, right? And to show her, like, that means something to me. So that's what I mean by focus on the positive. It doesn't always have to be sunny and happy, and it doesn't always have to end with everybody smiling as they get into bed, right? It's not how it works. Okay, so I'm going to run through some types of conversations, and these are all in the book. So you can kind of think back through which kinds of conversations, as we talked about, like you guys have your own communication challenges probably that you're running into maybe regularly or maybe monthly. So these are the types of conversations that we typically have with tweens and teens. So we have heart-based, dangerous, uncomfortable, brave, and character. And we'll go through each of them. So the heart-based conversations are the ones about trust and intimacy. And when I talk about intimacy, I mean relationships of all kinds. So we really want to teach our children that it's okay to open up to others, and that's part of that fostering community. We want to show them that through our own modeling and how we take care of each other in our family, but also how we build friendships. And we want to talk about trust. And so technology is a place where we expose ourselves a lot. Hopefully not too much, physically, but we expose ourselves, we expose our feelings, we expose who we are. And that can be a very scary place too, because if people don't like our pictures, or if people think what we're doing is stupid, or we see somebody at a party that we're not invited to, that can make us feel very vulnerable. And so we teach them about trust. Who do we trust with the information that we hold sacred? And who do we not want to hurt? How do we protect our friends' feelings? And how do we act with dignity in a way that we can be really proud of? So we do that by teaching them that it's okay to open yourself up carefully. We teach them that you have to kind of be aware of who you are and what your role is in a situation. You're modeling self-love. So it's okay to be proud of yourself. And it's okay because if you don't love yourself, it's going to be very hard for other people to love you. And you help them name the emotions. So when kids enter 7th grade and 9th grade, it's kind of like they went back to kindergarten sometimes. They have hormone surges, and they have a really hard time controlling, how they actually feel inside. But on top of that, they really care what everybody thinks about them, and they want to stand out and be the best, and they also don't want to be seen at all. They want to blend in and be just part of the herd. And that is a really hard role to play every day. We also ask kids to jump out of their comfort zones regularly, sometimes as often as every 47 minutes with our bell schedules. It depends on what your bell schedule is. But we ask them, like, maybe they love language arts, but all of a sudden, ding, ding, and they have to jump in a Spanish class where they're doing an oral presentation in a language they don't know. Or sometimes it's the cafeteria or gym class that is extremely difficult and out of your comfort zone. And we're asking them to jump into these places regularly. So we just want to be very mindful about how do they protect and name those emotions that they're feeling. And they keep it all in, and then they come home. And we see it. So we help them name those emotions. You seem really frustrated. And let me tell you that calling them out like you're in a mood is not helpful. And I've done that. I have a son whom I love dearly, whom we call the Dementor. If you read Harry Potter, he has the ability, we tell him he has this great ability to suck all the joy out of the home. But with that, he has this great ability to bring such happiness to each of us. When he's riding a high, we are all so happy. Like truly happy. He has this great energy. In fact, his coach calls him a human megaphone. Okay, so and he was voted like most likely to brighten your day. So at school he is, and when he comes home, we see the rest. And it's really hard. So you help him name those emotions. It seems like you're really frustrated right now. What can I do to help? Or it's dinner time. If you can't be with us, where would you like to be? Your bedroom's a good choice. Right? So you help them, you teach them, just like you did when they were in kindergarten, just when they were learning their words. Okay, navigating those uncomfortable conversations, and these are the ones that make us squeamish, and these are the good ones for the car. So the most important thing when we are in an uncomfortable conversation is to own it. I'm not comfortable. I don't want to talk about this with you, but it's so important to me that I'm making time to have this conversation with you. And it's really important for us to talk about this. And you want to just be really honest and direct with them. And oftentimes this is about sex. Okay? And so whatever your family values are, this is your moment to share them. This is your moment in time to have that influence on them. And you think you're not an influencer in your kid's life, but you still are. You've got them. Okay, so have that conversation. A really wonderful place to have that conversation is in front of the television, because you could be watching, and one of my favorite shows ever is Friday Night Lights, where there's way too much teenage sex and drinking, and it's a great time to pause it and say, these aren't good choices, and they'll be like, oh, Mom, but you can talk about, like, what are the choices these kids are making? What would you do in that situation? And so this way you're able to enjoy some fun time together, but you're also able to really talk about things. And I encourage that, because it's very easy to judge the person on the TV. The minute you start to judge their friend, or worse yet, your child, they will shut down and stop talking to you. The minute they say something like, oh, so-and-so is drinking at the party, and you go, oh, really? I'm so glad you aren't friends with that person. They're probably just testing out some information on you. So the minute you start judging personally, it's hard, but you can judge the people on the screen all you want. And you can be like, wow, that's an interesting choice. They just met and they're already sleeping together. Wow, that doesn't happen in real high school, does it? You know, you can kind of talk to them about it. Noticing their transitions. So sometimes transitions are really typical. So we go into high school, we switch friend groups. It's 10th grade, we're getting a little more comfortable, we switch friend groups. But if your kid is switching friend groups and seems a little bit despondent, or their eating habits have changed, or they're not sleeping like they used to, or they seem a little more secretive, noticing those things and being aware of them can be very helpful. Understanding and respecting consent. So this is, you know, something that can be taught in very easy ways, like, can I borrow this from your bedroom? You know, oh, somebody took my stapler off my desk. I don't remember giving you permission. You know, you start with the really small things so that you can talk about the really important things. And you talk about, like, who are you? And this can start with very young children. Like, who are you as a person? What's your role in the world? And who's allowed to do what with you? And it doesn't all have to be physical from the start. So we have dangerous conversations, and this often has to do with our teenagers, with driving, with drinking, drugs, things that we're scared about, but it can also be like decision-making in general. So the kinds of things that we're thinking about where we're really scared, and this is where we watch our tone. This is where we can start to get a little bit shaky, or start to raise our voice, or start to make really strict rules in the house just because we're afraid. And one of my colleagues, I don't know if you've read Wendy Mogul, she wrote Blessing of a Skinny, Blessing of B-, she's a great author. She says, don't parent out of fear, parent out of hope. And I often go back to that. Because when we start to parent out of fear and we start to come down with really harsh, strict rules for no reason, or for what doesn't seem like a good reason, we start to lose that connection. It's less about the discipline and the punishment, and it's more about the consequences and the conversation. So really thinking about, okay, so my kid did something stupid. Maybe he drank and drove. Maybe he got in the car with somebody who was drinking. Maybe he just took the car keys without asking, right? Something dangerous. Okay, there's going to be a consequence. Maybe he got stopped by a policeman and there's like a really bad consequence, right? Like he lost his license. Maybe I have to impose the consequence. But what's most important is the conversation about it. Why am I so angry? Why am I so scared? What do you think the natural consequence would be? What do you think I should do right now? And they'll often come to it with you. Why do you think I'm so scared? Share some statistics with them. You know, really talking about it so that they know they can come to you. So that when they're at the party and they take a sip of alcohol or more than one sip, they know it's the wrong choice and they know they can come to you, as opposed to sneaking it and it becomes a habit, because now it's something I can do and I can sneak in and it's like my coping mechanism, instead of like, ooh, I tried that, I want to talk to my parents about that. Now, a really important thing in fostering community is giving your child a go-to person or people. So we want our children to come to us, and most likely you're here, you care, they're coming to you. But they won't always know that they can come to you with something. So they should have somebody in their life that they can go to. This could be an aunt or an uncle or a friend or a counselor or a teacher, a coach, and that person needs to know, I've identified you as my child's go-to person. You have permission for me to talk to them. You don't even need to tell me about it. I trust your judgment. So this is somebody who shares your morals. You trust enough with your child, and you say, you're the go-to person, and you talk about it all the time. Who's your go-to person? And they name it for you. And it's great if you can start that when they're really young, but it's not too late to introduce that person in high school. And often in high school, it could be the parent of a friend. And once they know that person doesn't have to talk to me when you talk to them, it's okay for it to be confidential, that makes it safe. Now they can have somebody to go to, and trust me, it works. So when there's something going down at a party, it's a lot easier to call your friend's mom than your own mom. And so they need to have that person. One of the things that's really important when we talk about the dangerous conversations is we do want them to be independent. So we have to relinquish some of our control. We have to let them try and understand that it's their job to push the boundaries. And it's their job to make mistakes and do stupid things. I remember the same son who's a Dementor came home one day, and I was very angry about something he did. I can't even remember what it was. And he said to me, "But isn't it my job to make mistakes?" He was kind of pulling my own, research on me. And I said, "Yes, absolutely. And it's my job to teach you why you shouldn't do that." So, it's a conversation. It's truly a conversation. Again, less about the punishment, more about the conversation and the consequence. Nurturing character conversation. So you've probably heard the term, character is who your kid is when you're not there. So who is your child? We talked in the beginning about our lighthouse being, they're independent, they have relationships. Somebody said they have balance in their life. Somebody else said that they have job that makes them feel good. They're contributing member to society. So we want to make sure that we're encouraging things like decision making. We want to make sure we're teaching them gratitude. A practice of gratitude is shown to help develop empathy. So this can look like at the dinner table, because now you're all going to go home and have family dinners for 25 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So this can look like sharing gratitude at the dinner table, and it can be very simple. Like, I'm really grateful for the spaghetti and meatballs tonight. I was really craving it. Or it can be, I was really grateful because my teacher let me, do a presentation on X, Y, or Z when she wanted me to do something else. So it can start really simple, and it will grow from there as long as you're modeling it and you're insisting on it. If you're not the type of family to do gratitude at the table, that's okay. It is a little bit corny. So you could do gratitude journals. You could do like a little jar where you put things and then you pull it out and you talk about it. Or you can just kind of talk about gratitude in general. Just bring it up. Make sure you're doing it in an intentional way regularly, and you're asking your kids what they're grateful for. And this will teach them also, there's always going to be somebody out there that has more than you. There's always going to be somebody out there who's smarter than you and more successful than you. And so that's why it's important to keep that idea of what success really looks like and to share that with your kids. Because if the gratitude is just for monetary things and material things, then it's not teaching them real acceptance in the world and real understanding of what they have. And so that's how it teaches empathy. And then fostering those brave conversations. So this is that advocacy, self-advocacy. It's very tempting when our kids are in, elementary school to say, "My Johnny would always stand up if a kid's being bullied. I know my Johnny would." But it's actually very not human nature to stand up when somebody's being bullied. It's actually really, really tempting to join in the crowd, right? That's why we have things like, wisdom of the crowd. So we tend to react in situations, and we either join in or we fall back. And it's very hard for us to learn advocacy. So as parents, we have to teach it, we have to model it, and we have to reward it, okay? So advocacy starts, and I'll share a story with you. One time when I was not a very good advocate. I was in a parking lot, and my child was very young. My oldest was in a stroller still. And there was somebody who was being physically abusive to somebody else in the parking lot. And I was with my husband, and we were both kind of confused, and we played that sort of looky-loo role, and we sort of scurried to the car, put our kid in, and left because we didn't want to get involved. And I think we kind of used the excuse that we had our son with us, and we wanted to kind of be safe. And I think we sort of felt that way. But we also didn't really do what we should have done. And I've talked about that with my kids, and I think back on that woman who was being handled physically. And I would think about her a lot. This was many, many years ago. He's 18 years old now. And I'm ashamed of that decision that I made. And I can justify it, but I'm not sure it was the right decision. Now, a few years ago, I was actually with that son and another, my daughter and my younger son and my parents. And so I'm with a lot of people that I need to protect, right? And I see a similar situation happening on the side of the street. And I chose to step in. And it was a little bit scary for me, but I felt like it was my duty to step in. And I felt like I needed to almost make up for times when I hadn't stepped in. And so it was showing my kids, and we've talked a lot about that in my decision making, and I actually put myself in danger, and by stepping in, I kind of put my kids in danger. You know, it's like, was that also a dumb idea? I'm not sure. And so we talk about it. We talk about, like, what is it to protect the other people in the world? And I felt safe. We were on a street corner. It didn't feel like that parking lot where things were sort of empty. I felt like there were enough people around. I had my phone. I could call for help. That's what I offered to do because I'm not physically going to stop an altercation. You know, so I just sort of stepped in and said, would you like me to call the police? And that stopped the situation, and everybody was safe, and we went on our merry way. We waited until the police came, and then we went on our merry way. So a lesson to be learned. Like, we're not always going to act smart, but we can talk about what our decisions were and how we felt about them after the fact. So those are extreme situations. There are other situations. You can act politically. You can do letter campaigns. You can write for Amnesty International. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can teach advocacy in the world. And so really just teaching your kid what it is to stand up, because you can't expect your kid to stand up if they don't see what that means to stand up in the world. And you need to find those opportunities for them, but you also need to support it. Another way to support these brave conversations, have you guys heard, if you could raise your hands, of growth mindset? Oh, good. Okay. So Carol Dweck, a researcher at Stanford University also, she's got a couple books on it now, but it's the idea that when we're born, we're like, I'm a great soccer player, I'm really good at math. And you get that fixed mindset, like, oh, I'm not good at math, or I can't do science, or I'm not a good writer. But growth mindset is, I could really learn, and I can actually be good in many things if I put in the time and effort. So I may naturally be acclimated to this one thing, but if I really want to be good at that, I can be really good at that. And so we can support that growth mindset, one, by stop labeling ourselves, right? Oh, I'm no good at that. And two, by like really encouraging, well, have you tried? Well, what did you do to try? Have you talked to other people who are good at it? You know, there's this thing called, you know, summer camp where you can practice that. You know, there's ways that we support that, and we teach them, like, you're not fixed in the world. You can grow and develop. And that's how we develop into brave and courageous people. So with that, I've given you a lot of information. I want you to go back and think about that challenging conversation moment in your mind that we talked about in the beginning. I asked you to kind of keep it in the back of your head. And think to yourself, okay, how can I change tomorrow in my conversation style? What can I tweak? What is it that I need to do? Do I need to support growth mindset? Do I need to step back and listen more? What is it that I can do different in the conversation? I can't change how my child's going to react. I can't control how they will react. But what I can do is I can read my own part in the conversation and try it. And the next step to it is talking to your kids about it. This isn't a mystery. This isn't secret. You know, I went to a talk the other night. I'm thinking a lot about how we communicate. I don't like the way we argue before dinner. I think we're all hungry and grumpy. I think maybe we need some quiet time before dinner, or maybe we need to eat earlier, or maybe we need a snack time. You know, whatever it is, right? I don't like the way you don't share with me about your relationships. I would love to meet some of your friends. What's the best way for me to go about this with you? Invite them into the conversation. Or is there a reason I don't know your friends? Is there a reason you want to keep that separate from home? And honor that, right? Thinking about it, talking about it. It's not a mystery. And so we think about, like, what is my role in it? What can I change? And how can I help my child think reflectively about their role in it? And so, like my Dementor son, and I told you, don't say you're in a mood. I did that. He came home from school, first day of 10th grade. My little one was entering 4th grade, happy as a clam, came home. My older one was in middle school at the time, came home happy as a clam. My Dementor came home, and I thought, well, he's 10th grade, no problem. He's already started high school. Not happy as a clam. And I said, ooh, you seem like you're in a mood. Well, that set him off. Big surprise, right? So we learned. I literally sat him down and said, okay, what I said was not productive. What can I do the next time you're in a mood like that? And so we talked about it. We talked about some cueing. We talked about what he can do for himself. What could I do in the situation? And I owned it. I said, it's on me. I shouldn't have said that. We didn't talk about punishing him for being in a bad mood. We talked about, like, what can we do in the next situation? So I encourage you to open up that conversation with your child. Really be honest with the challenges you're having. And it won't be fixed in the moment, and it might not even be fixed the next time you have the conversation, but I guarantee you, if you continue to practice, it will get better, and this is the conversation you will be having for life. This is effective with siblings. If you see them arguing all the time, you don't have to step in. You can just say, I don't like the way you're interacting. Let's talk about it. But you don't do it in the moment. You do it after the moment, and you bring them into the conversation, and you call them out on it, and you role play with them, and you name it. And that with enough practice, they'll start to catch themselves in it. And I've seen it work with families, so much so that my email address is amy@amyalamar.com. If you're struggling, I encourage you to email me, because it just takes practice. That's all it takes. So I already said that to you, so I encourage you to think of that challenge or success and to think about what you're going to tweak or recreate, and be patient with it. And then if you have questions for me, I'm here this evening, and so we thought we'd open it up to you guys for any questions that you have, and I welcome those now. Quiet group, you guys must be middle school parents. Oh, right here. Yeah, so what do you do for the child who's a vault? So, I mean, doesn't talk.
Right. How do you engage? How do you get that started?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I mentioned this is very common for tween boys. It happens with all kinds of kids. So it may be a girl that's doing it, in her late teen years. But oftentimes that happens with tween boys. And it can be years. They can really, what feels like disappear for years. And so what's really important for you to understand in that moment when they're that vault, I like the way you say that, is it's like a cocoon, right? Like they're actually developing in there, they're taking things in and they're processing. So they might not be as verbal as you want. So what is the conversation you can have with them? And they need to be a part of it, but it can just be a lot of listening and quiet, right? So you don't need to fill the space. Be okay with quiet. Share what you're feeling, share your concerns, and then find common interests. You may not want to go play a video game, but that may be the way to open up that kid. You may not want to go shopping. That may be a great way. Cooking. My daughter loves to bake and loves superheroes, and I don't care for either of those activities at all. There's this thing called fan fiction I'm still learning about, and she goes on for hours about these stories that I could care less about. But I listen because what I try to do is find my part in it. Like, where can I interject and ask the question? And the more questions you're asking about what they're interested in, the more they'll open up. So you start there. You start with that common interest or the silence. Maybe it's an activity. Or you model it. So if there are siblings or a spouse, you're talking at the table and they're hearing it. Yeah. Does that help? Okay. Anybody else? Wow, really quiet here. Okay, yep, one more question. Oh, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. So they're saying, like, you don't understand, so they can't talk to you about stuff? Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, okay, so one of the worst things we tend to say, and we've all done it, right? Like, well, I've been a teenage girl. Like, I've gone to high school, I've gone to middle school, I know what it's like, but we don't. We don't know what it's like right now in their shoes. And so acknowledging that and validating that, right? So it's not about they're always right, but it's about wow, that does sound hard. And kind of showing that empathy. And again, stepping back a little bit. And that's a great question, right? Because we tend to want to jump in and fix. Like, oh yeah, you know, for homework, you just need to make those flashcards. That's how you're going to learn it. I promise you, you know, because that's what worked for us. So really just stepping back and saying, that sounds really hard, or I can see what the challenge is, or I don't understand. Can you explain it to me? And then trying again to share in their interests, right? So, and be the dork, right? Like, what's this singer again? You know, like, what's a twerk? I don't understand. You know, and like really trying to talk with them, because you're showing an interest. You don't have to be cool to be interested. And the more engaged you are with them, like truly engaged, the better. That doesn't mean you are always present and, you know, hearing everything. It means that you're engaged with them when you're talking. Yeah. But I think asking the question and like really validating who they are and showing them that you understand that feeling. So using those sort of responses of, that sounds hard, that sounds funny, that sounds awkward, what did you do? Instead of like, oh yeah, I know how that is. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. So important. I'm really glad you said that, because remember I said you can control it sometimes, but always be aware of it, because you can't always control it. So she's asking about timing, and we have to protect our own timing too. So as best you can, you accommodate them, right? Like, because that's your job. So, you know, we try to see when it's a good time for them. But it's always okay to say, this is not the time to have that conversation, or I will have this conversation with you in brief and hear you out, but I'm not ready to respond to you. Right? So like if they're asking permission, for example, to do something, or they really want to talk to you about going to this dance or something, you can say, tell me what you're thinking, but I'm going to be making dinner and I'm hungry. You name it. You name your emotion. Like, I'm grumpy, I'm tired, I'm distracted. So go ahead and tell me what you need to tell me, and we'll put it on hold and we'll finish the conversation later. Or I need, you know, your dad to weigh in on this, or I want to think about it. Yeah, and they do, and they will, and it's okay. And that's when I think I had on one of the slides, like, you follow through. It's like really important for you to follow through. Like, I hear you, and we'll get back to it. And if it means setting a timer on your phone, that's when a phone can be great. Like, why don't you set a timer on my phone for 9:30 that says talk about whatever, or for tomorrow? Like, you know, just, you know, I get it, I hear you, and that's when you have to follow through on it. But it's kind of good if they are pushing on you and they're trying to negotiate with you. This is where we can really promote independence, and we pick our fights, right? So I see this is really important to you. I'm going to give you on this one, but on that one, I'm going to hold back. You know, and so we really show them that we're listening, and that's the validation versus you're always right. Absolutely. Yeah, validation is huge. They are a part of the family. And they, if we want them to be independent, if we really want that, we've got to teach them how to advocate for themselves. And that's what they're doing. So it can be very frustrating when they assert those funny things called personalities. It can be extremely frustrating. But you do have to take care of yourself. She said, well, you know, we have our own exhaustion and hunger. And so it's okay to name that too. And it's important to name that, because you're modeling for them, like, I'm not ready to engage in a conversation on this. This is way too important. My son got his license, and all of a sudden he wanted a car. It was like, whoa, you're 16. I'm not going to buy a car. Like, this is like really, that's a big decision. We don't talk about that in one day and solve it, right? And believe me, he pushed. That was a daily conversation. Yeah. Yeah. Great questions. Thank you very much. Any others? Well, I'll hang around if there are any others. I thank you so much for joining, and please don't forget the evaluation.
Yeah, and we're going to do the raffle. So we'll have you pick the names,
okay.
all right? Okay. Here, you do the picking. Okay. Catherine Roach. Oh, good. Come on. And Julia Mitchell. Julia Mitchell. Is Julia here? Oh, good. And Claire. Hopefully, I will not. Cayone. Is Claire here?
Aione.
No, no Claire. Oh, good. Congratulations. And if you guys would like Amy to sign that for you and personalize it, she'd be happy to do that, so you can bring it up front, okay? And please just put your evaluations on the table on your way out. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Amy, very much.